Dear friends, welcome to THALIR. It means bud. It is budding force to a new life. And we are Capuchins working for the renewal of the society and the church. My dear friends, welcome to the international program for the midlifers. This program is being held from 3rd to 7th of November, every day in the evening, 6 to 7:30 p.m. Indian time. We are focusing on growing gracefully and midlife transition. This is offered by THALIR Capuchin Online Ministries. This is from Virtual Institute of Spirituality, Integration and Transformation. Visit. We are struggling with the discontentment with life and boredom with things and people. We start questioning the meaning of life. We are confused about who we are and where our life is going. We are facing boredom, exhaustion, self-questioning, daydreaming. We have come across irritability, unexpected anger. We are sometimes act on alcohol, drug, food and other compulsions. Sometimes we are also greatly decreased or increased in sexual desires and other concerns. We are also decreased and increased by ambitions in life. Therefore, to answer to these situations, we are happy to have amidst us Reverend Dr. Staney, CSSR, the Redemptorist priest. On the first day, we will be dealing with midlife crisis versus midlife transition. We'll follow with physical transition, emotional transition, spiritual rebirth, and relational transitions. We welcome you to have a wonderful interaction, input, and clarifications. Here comes Reverend Father Dr. Staney, CSSR.
Good evening, brothers and sisters. Good afternoon and good morning to some of you. This is a marvelous time to gather from all parts of the world. And we welcome you to this week's wonderful session. We are passing through a crucial time in our own personal life, in our social life, in our religious life, in our cultural life, and also an emotional life. Where therefore, we saw it's very important for us to focus on the middle-aged group, which starts usually from 40 to 60, but now I think it's going to become from 30 to 60, 30 to 70. So it's almost a big chunk of group. Actually, we are coming from this. I'm very happy to tell you that this group is the policy makers, actually for the whole church, for the congregation. And also through the church, through our apostolate, we are the masters of the universe. The whole world is in your control. If you decide, you can change the world. If you decide, you can change the society. If you decide, you can change the mindset of your own congregation. As therefore, God has given us this marvelous gift, a gift of the past, a gift for the future. Therefore, I'm very happy to welcome each and every one of you from different parts of the world, different continents. And at the beginning itself, I would like to introduce to you one of our fathers from our institute, Reverend Father Tamil Chelvam. Tamil Chelvam is a counselor, he's a therapist, and he is a self-psychologist. So I invite him to lead us into a prayer and followed by a short introduction, and straight away we'll move into the resource person. I welcome Father Tamil Chelvam. Father Tamil, you can unmute your mic and start your prayer.
Heavenly Father, we praise and thank you for this beautiful week that we're going to have in the form of a webinar. We thank the organizers, Father Nitya and his team, for their concerted effort to bring enlightenment to all the villages across the globe. Lord, in a special way, we ask you to bless our presenter, Father Stanley, who is going to guide us this week on the important phase of our life, the middle age. Lord, as villagers, we get disoriented, we get abandoned, we get depressed. Obviously, many a time we are not aware that we are undergoing biological transition. Many a time we question our life, especially during this middle age period. Lord, be with us, guide us. May we be strengthened, Lord, by this course so that we may group our energies. We may get all our resources once again in our life so that we may be able to understand the new generation with whom we are living and accept them, the new insight that we get from them. Lord, psychologically, we are weak to understand ourselves. May we be enlightened by the Holy Spirit that we are able to be enlightened people, and may we trust our own selves, especially in your faith, Lord, that you are with us, that we may become fruitful during this crisis and become beacons of knowledge, wisdom to our own people where we serve. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen. Thank you, Father Nitya.
Thank you, Father Tamil. Dear friends, as I welcome each and every one of you, I just want to give you a small introduction about ourselves. This is a center called THALIR. THALIR is a bud. It's a budding force for a new life to the church, to the society, especially to the people who are in periphery. So our major activities, welfare of the society in various parts of this area, especially starting with the marginalized people. We are in a remote rural area, actually, this THALIR. It's not even a village, it's on the roadside. And we are reaching out to all of you so that we will really go to what the Pope Francis speaks about, going to the periphery. So our main task is the social activities, concern for the poor, the marginalized communities, like we are taking care of transgenders and the gypsies and people with the primitive tribes. So another activity that we have started in our center is the counseling. Father Tamil is the counselor, and we have got also other people who are counseling, guiding, and confession, reconciliation, other things. We also give training for the teachers so that we'll create a new society. Especially, we also campaign against the violence against women, because it's a very big issue all over the world. More than nearly 50% of women, they are not really dignified, their own right, their due. So that's one of the important thing. And another thing is the child rights. And now we have started recently this online courses. Online, this actually to find out the way to reach out to the people at large. So we start with Sunday messages, video messages, 5 languages, Tamil, English, French, Hindi, and Sinhala. We also plan to do some more, and monthly recollections are there. So we send everything by this WhatsApp and email. And now this recently we start this past 2 months is the motivational trainings. And now we have started this in short, this motivational training. For what we started was on leadership training we gave 2, and we also gave for formators and another one for the formies. So it's a very big representation. Teachers, more than 1,200 teachers participated. And for the secretaries, also the overall importance and efficiency of the secretaries. Now we have started this for people in middle age, midlife transition. It's a very important thing, very good response, a lot of expectations. I hope that we'll be able to give. And we have got an excellent staff today for this week, research, very scientific, Reverend Father Staney. And I didn't introduce myself. I'm Friar Nitya, Franciscan Capuchin Friar. I'm the director of this institute. We call it VISIT, Virtual Institute for Spirituality, Integrity, and Transformation. For this week, we are very happy to have Reverend Father Staney, CSSR, Redemptorist priest, and he's a head of the department, institute called Atmara, Center for Counseling and Psychotherapy and Life Skill Training. It's a very good trainer. In fact, I'm a student. This week, I'm also undergoing a body language training. And he'll be a very good resource person for you also. And he's working at the Anugrah Institute for Counseling and Psychotherapy. He's a lecturer in several colleges in Bangalore, Madurai, and universities also, several places. And he has handled several individuals and I think thousands of people he has counseled. So he has a rich experience, especially is guiding the youth as well as the middle-aged people. And his specialization is workshop from cognitive therapies. Cognitive therapies, SQ, spiritual quotient, emotional quotient, development stages, psychosexual integration, and psychospirituality, which is very much needed for all of us. And also is a counseling psychotherapist and eclectic psychotherapies, emotional management, stress management, and group process, conflict resolution, group building, and assertiveness training. I think you are the right person, the fit person to guide all of us. So I don't want to take much of our time. So 10 minutes pass, I straight away call him. The process will be like this. He'll be taking for 1 full hour from now onwards up to 10, that means 7:10. Then you can come up. Maybe in the beginning, for today, he may give in between sometimes for any clarification or something. As far as possible, write your questions in the chat box so that you'll be straight to the point. So you'll be able to give us, many more people can participate in it. That's one thing I wanted to tell you. But then at the end of the talk, we can ask for clarification, some 15 minutes. After the talk, 7:30 officially we close, Indian time. 7:30 we close officially. In case you want to ask some questions, you can still continue for 10 more minutes or 15 more minutes. Yeah, therefore, I invite you, Father Staney, the Redemptorist priest, very good counselor therapist, to lead us. The floor is yours, Father Staney. Welcome.
Thank you, Father Nitya. And so good evening, friends. It's a great honor and a privilege, in fact, to talk about a topic that is so vitally important. It's important for not only our personal lives, it's also like as people, as we are taking care of other people. So it's basically like how I can handle myself first, how I can understand what I'm going through, the processes that is there, that's going through me, and then if I'm able to get a hang of it, then probably then I'll be in a much better position to help out people. So I think that's a great opportunity, and also I consider this as a great honor. So thank you very much. And yeah, so the topic that we're going to talk about for the next 5 days, we're going to talk about this, a vitally important process that we go through in life. You know, friends, we go through a lot of processes, a lot of it, okay? As children, as adolescents, as people who have just passed through the 20s, 30s, full of energy, and we are focused on our ministry, our mission, and so on. But there comes another time wherein we need to stop. We need to stop and we need to recheck where we are going. So it's like we have a roadmap and we know that we have a goal and we have a strategy to attain that goal. But what happens with the energy? Is it pushing me or propelling me forward to understand my goal, or how fast I go, or how slow am I going, or am I standing midway without knowing what am I doing? I think this is vitally important for all of us to understand what's happening to me. Because in general, we are talking about what happens to people, what happens to mission, what happens to my congregation, what happens to the world, what happens to politics, and what happens to the GDP of the country. Now, the one person that we tend to forget is me. Because without me, I cannot talk about the GDP of a country. I cannot talk about the politics of a country or the economics of a country or even the mission and the ministry of my own congregation. Because that is the energy form that I need to be revitalized. So basically, we are trying to understand me. We're trying to understand me. What's going on within me? What kind of thoughts are going on inside me? What kind of emotions are there that I have? Or how do I behave when I'm alone? How do I behave when in a group? Or how do I behave in a ministry, in a place of my mission? Or how do I relate to people whom I call friends and family, or even members of my own congregation? I think this is of vital importance. And that is why Father Nitya, as he mentioned before, he has chosen this particular topic. I think this is going to be great. Okay. So these 5 days, we're going to take it slow. We're not going to rush into anything. We're going to take it slow. We're going to understand things. And also we are going to grapple about our own personal lives based on whatever we are learning. Okay, friends, so that will be more or less the modality that we will try to follow. Don't worry, we don't have to complete everything in a day, because it's a process. We're talking about a process, and we are going to have a process for the next 5 days. And it's not going to end up on day 5, on Saturday evening. Probably we have reached a milestone. Probably we might pick it up from there on practicalities from there, maybe another process and another process, because it is going to take a while. So welcome to this journey of understanding what is midlife, what is the transition, what are the myths involved in that, is it really a crisis, or is it only a phase of life, whether people can be successful in that, or they fail in that. And we're going to probe into all these things. Okay, friends, if I were to ask you this question, there are two middle-aged people, and if I were to ask you, how do they come across to you? I'm sure that happy, enjoying what they're doing, passionate about something, and coordinating among themselves. You see, first of all, they're enjoying themselves, and they're passionate about what they're doing, and they're trying to coordinate with each other, and then they're happy, basically. Now, this is the crux of what we are talking about, the midlife transition. Now, both these people are midlifers. Now, let me break it down to you. The one who's on the piano is called Schmid. He's a German, but settled in America. Now, he had a crisis. The crisis was he had a daughter, a young daughter, was 22, and she died in a car crash. And this man, the one who played the piano, he went into very deep depression because he had his child and he saw his child dying in a prime of her life, and he couldn't take it anymore. And there were too many questions in his mind. He was saying that, what's happening to me? What's happening to my family? What's happening to God? What's happening? Too many questions. And then he was into this, and then there was a tremendous change. He withdrew, got into depression. Not of the clinical variety, but he was getting into depression. But what brought him back to what he was doing is love for piano, his love for the instrument. So they both are friends, and they both came up and they started this thing called the Piano Guys. Okay, you can find them on YouTube. And they started producing beautiful music, and especially at different landscapes, very unique to them. Just two of them, but very unique. This is an ice, very spectacular kind of a concept. They did it in the forest. They did it in Grand Canyon. They also did it in the Great Wall of China. Now, that sort of passion was something that they were reliving. Now, we need to ask, what made this person go from a state of depression, of meaninglessness, to something that was so meaningful, and he continues to do. And that's the transition we are talking about. Okay, I'm not saying that everybody goes through dying. I'm just giving an example of it. But then people can go through a whole lot of other triggers and stimuli or stimulus that can normally change the course of one's life. It could be the health reason. It could be a loss of a status. It could be a loss of a person, maybe a loss of a relationship, or among married people, maybe a divorce, death of a loved one, maybe children getting married, moving out of the family. It could be any of these triggers can spark a question in your mind. What am I doing? What am I doing with my life? And that's a very haunting question. And then people tend to be withdrawn and they go through this process. Now, is this process a good process or a bad person? It's a judgment call. We're not saying it's a good process or a bad process. All that we are saying, it is a necessary process. It's a necessary process everybody has to face. So I'm going to share with you a PowerPoint, and then I want to also show to you a person who goes through a real experience, and she's sharing it with us. Okay. Now, normally, a very popular word that we can use is midlife crisis. Oh, it sounds a little scary, isn't it? A crisis? A crisis means helplessness. A crisis means I do not have the resources to tackle a situation. Therefore, I feel helpless and then I just sulk. That's what crisis means. Crisis means I'm trying to evaluate a situation, and I'm also trying to analyze or assess what are the tools that I have to understand this particular situation. And I don't know. I don't know. And I say, my mind says, no, I can't. Because the tools that I have is not going to match to deal with that situation. Therefore, I withdraw, I feel helpless, and I feel stressed. And that's what is called stress. Another word, stress. We get into a lot of stress. Now, basically, it is the way that I look at a situation and my evaluation on it. Now, situation can also be my life as a situation. It's made of situations. And this evaluative process goes on and on and on. And when I'm saying that my resources are enough to tackle this situation, I feel comfortable. Now, say, for example, I'm sure that we all had invited people for over dinner. We all did, probably at some point in time. Now, normally what happens, okay, I have about, say, 20 invitees for dinner. So I'm preparing, okay, four-course meal or three-course meal or whatever for 20 people. But then I also have something called the contingency planning. What is contingency planning? Supposing if there were 30 turnouts, will I be able to manage? Yeah, that's a contingency planning. So I have a plan A, that means the menu for the day. I also have a plan B, that's a contingency planning, saying that in case they bring somebody else along, so there might be 30 people, will I be able to handle the situation? So therefore, I might prepare a little extra. I will foresee what can happen. That is, in my preview, it's possible. But what if 60 people turn out? And then we panic. 60 people turn out for our dinner because each one brought their own families, and our contingency planning is only for extra 10. And now, how to manage the extra 40? And then we panic. And then we feel helpless. Then we lose control. And that is when things turn out to be a crisis. Okay. Now, there's another way of looking at it. There is also a transition, a movement from, a movement towards. Just like a train departing from one particular station and reaching another station, that's its destiny. That means it's got a smooth flow. Probably it might have a little rattle here and there. The train might probably go through the weather conditions. Maybe it's thundering and lightning at some part of the journey. Or maybe something that you're not able to sleep on the train while traveling. All these are possibilities. But you're going to start from one station and you're going to be transported and you're going to move towards another. And ultimately, you're going to move to another station. And that's a transition. But in between, you might have a lot of other variables. Like lightning, thunder, rain. Maybe the train is waiting for at a junction to cross over, or probably you went to sleep and you couldn't sleep, whether it's too hot, too cold. Yeah, these are things that can be handled, but they're not very pleasant, but they can be handled. But ultimately, you're going to move from one station to another, and that's basically transition. And now I would like to talk about this particular person in the 1970s called Reginald Perrin. This also came as a sitcom, a show, a popular show in the 1970s, late 70s. Now, what is the story of this Reginald Perrin? Now, Reginald Perrin was a business executive who was working in London. A business executive working in London. Life was smooth as ever. He's married. He's got 2 children. And he's got a very stable job. He's economically viable. He's got a house. He's got his savings. Everything moves very smoothly for him up till he turns 43. Everything is fine. But then at 43, disinterested sets in. He's asking a question, what's happening to me? What is the meaning of all this? I'm living with this person in marriage for a long time. What does that mean? I'm going to the same job, a stable job, and what am I doing? I have finances, but what am I going to do with the finances? A whole lot of questions. And he feels disillusioned because he couldn't find the answer. Was it the work that he's doing that he's actually enjoying doing it, or he's just doing it because it comes as a flow for him? Everything is right for him. So he's asking a question, am I really enjoying it? Do I really want what I'm doing? And he comes to a state of desolation. And this Reginald Perrin, what he does, he wants to end up his life. So what happens? He walks down to an ocean. That's what the picture here is, an ocean. He walks down to the ocean. He removes all his clothing, walks into the sea, but not to die. He's not dying. He goes up to his neck level, walks back outside the ocean. Then he puts a new set of clothes, wears a baseball hat, and calls himself Moose Stevenson. He calls himself as Moose Stevenson. So therefore, he discarded the old, took over a new identity, and disappeared. Now, this is a real story happened to a person called Reginald Perrin. And this sort of was intriguing in the minds of a lot of people. Why would such a successful businessman who's got everything going on well for him, a good family, good children, good job, good housing, good security, and finances are good, why would somebody be disillusioned? And that is when we need to ask this question, what made Reginald Perrin disillusioned? He was trying to re-evaluate his life here and now. Now, friends, we need to go back a little bit, okay? Do we re-evaluate life? Definitely, yes, we do. Now, when we are growing up to say age 11, 12, sometimes 13 years old, it comes under childhood. So we don't have a care for anything. We're just growing. But something happens. And what happens is we attain puberty, sexual maturation. We attain our sexual maturation. Mostly it is pronounced for girls, and it's also a cultural thing. For girls, it's celebrated. Like, say, for example, religion for that matter. Christianity or Hinduism or even Islam, they all speak something like that. Now, they even have this in the scripture saying that anybody who does not bear a child is called a barren, and it is supposed to be a curse from God. Supposed to be a curse from God. And that's what people tend to believe. But then what about a birth of a child? A birth of a child is a celebration. Now, it's not only a celebration for the family, it's also a communal celebration, a societal celebration. So basically, people tend to have a big celebration. Like people like in India, they have a big celebration. It's a public celebration. Of course, men, poor guys, they don't have a chance for it because nobody bothers about it. But still, they also get sexually mature. But it's not celebrated. Now, let's take this coming of age, sexual maturation. It's got two connotations basically. One, the family rejoices because it's got a progeny, it's got a child to propagate their destiny. The society rejoices because there is a new member coming into the society. Now, what about the woman? Does the woman celebrate? Yes, the woman celebrates. You know why? Because what actually fulfills a woman is basically a birth of a child. Because it is also conditioned by culture, society, and family, but they also believe that the birth of a child completes me. So therefore, that is why we see this attachment of the mothers with a child, especially the firstborn. Could be a boy or it could be a girl. They feel really attached to them. Why they are attached to them? Because they feel that this particular person gave me the ultimate meaning, the ultimate meaning. So therefore, I feel attached to this person. So generally, people can have a lot of fears around these firstborn children or any children for that matter, mothers normally. They call this strange anxieties and separation anxiety and so on. So anyway, not getting into technicalities, but that fear is there. So when the child is born, the mother does not know what to do. She doesn't know really. Probably she might go for a course where if you're in the United States of America or in some developed countries, but otherwise it doesn't happen. Say, for example, in India, it doesn't happen. It's only hearsay. Your elders tell you what to do. But the child communicates with the mother, and the only language the child communicates is crying. Psychologically, they call this as the cooing effect. Okay, the child cries. And why does the child cry? The child cries for everything. Change of diapers, crying. Hunger, crying. They have sensitivity to the ear, crying. They have problems with the tummy because of digestion, they cry. Now, which crying is for what? The mother finds it difficult. But the mother sort of sinks in with the child and tends to understand, which no man can ever understand. No man can ever understand. A woman can understand. A mother can understand. After a while, the mother exactly knows this crying is for change of diaper. This crying is for a mosquito bite. This crying is for the ear pain. So there is a kind of a filial relationship that's going on with the mother and the child. And later on, they tend to communicate in a language only they understand. The mother makes a noise, the child makes a noise, and they both tend to understand each other. So that is why the whole context of the child is very important for any woman for that matter. Now imagine what happens when the child grows up and moves away from the family. That becomes a problem. Now it could turn out to be a mother-in-law and daughter-in-law problem, which could be a typical triangle formation, power struggle. Or the mother, how does the mother feel? My possession, I protected, I brought this child up. Now my child is going away to a hostel, or they're going away to another university to study, or my child is going to a priesthood, or going to become a nun, or they're getting married. Now it's almost like I've lost it. You see, the one person whom I was so close to, I've lost it. So the feeling of the mother is equated to a mother bird when it realizes all the chicks have developed wings and have flown away. Imagine the feeling of a mother bird when all the birds, all the chicks, they grow wings, they become independent, they fly away. It is the mother alone left in the nest, left inside the nest. That's called an empty nest syndrome, that they use this in midlife transition. People feel empty. That means the empty like what? Empty like a mother who looks at its chicks growing wings, flying away, and sitting all alone in the nest. And that's the feeling. They call it as empty nest syndrome. And this is what a regnal parent actually developed, an empty nest syndrome. Now, this was not about the losing of a child. It's not about losing of a child. I talked about the pianist called Schmidt. He had this emptiness syndrome when his daughter died at 22. It's a feeling, emptiness syndrome. Now, for regular parent, it was emptiness all along because he didn't know what was happening. It was totally empty. And that's exactly, he even took a different identity and called him Moose Stevenson and moved away. Now, friends, this emptiness, feeling of empty, is not a bad thing at all. It is emotionally challenging, yes. It is emotionally challenging. It's a turmoil, and we can have bouts of anger, maybe irritability, sometimes can get into depression. We can indulge in things like overeating, oversleeping, alcoholism, or we can even get into some buying of something very, very expensive, buying something that I don't need, or selling off everything that I have, or even change my own career. I might leave as a priest, I can leave priesthood and get married. Or I can leave priesthood and I can move into another world, like say Mother Teresa. Mother Teresa moved from Loretos and she found her own congregation. There were people like that. They left because they found the true meaning for their emptiness is somewhere else. Now that is a very, though it's turmoil, that was a realistic transition. But some people do this. They just jump out. And after that, they regret. They jump out. So married people, they can, like at 40, 45, they can get into another affair. Maybe a relationship with another woman or a man. Because they wanted to see something new. Or they might get into a different kind of behavioral pattern, like spendthrifting. Or something like pursuing, just traveling everywhere, resigning the job. Or, moving from an IT company and buying a land and becoming a farmer. There can be so many things. Sometimes they can make momentary decisions which people tend to regret. But there are also decisions people tend to do which becomes a transition. And this is the difference between a crisis and a transition. A crisis is I make an emotional decision, an impulsive decision, where it seems okay for the time being, but later on I regret. And that is it. It becomes a crisis. A transition is I understand my emptiness syndrome, my emptiness. I can see and go through whatever I'm going through, the emotional turmoil, but I see a possibility of what I can become. That makes it a transition. So today, we are actually talking about this topic about what is a transition, what is a crisis. Okay, that's basically what we are talking about. And now I would like to play for you a testimony of a person who is actually going through midlife transition.
In my mid-40s, I knew that something needed to change. My life was fine by any standard. I had 5 wonderful boys, a husband who loved me, good health and a beautiful home. Nothing to complain about, you could say. Yet I felt sad, lonely and confused. I tried to shake off the chronic feelings of discontent, but I couldn't even identify the root cause of those feelings, let alone deal with them. In hindsight, I now know that this sadness was in fact grief. I was mourning the loss of my role as a mother. At that stage, 3 of my boys had left home and another was getting ready to go. I hadn't expected empty nest syndrome to hit me so badly. I spoke to others, trying to gauge whether this was just me. I found others were also suffering, but no one was offering any answers. I decided to do some research on the subject and was relieved to find out that I was not going mad. I was not abnormal. I was simply experiencing a midlife transition. I spent the next 2 years researching the subject of midlife further, and I found a way to work through my own transition. The biggest issue we face is how to deal with change. For many of us in our 40s and 50s, there's no roadmap as we go through this unknown territory. Added to this uncertainty are the myths and assumptions which still surround the process of getting older. The subjects of childhood, adolescence and old age are all well covered, but there is almost nothing for the midlife age group. GPs provide support for the menopause, but midlife is a far wider issue, and it includes both men and women. This lack of provision was the trigger for this DVD. Following my research, I interviewed 6 people, 3 men and 3 women, who spoke openly about their experience of midlife. I also spoke to a psychologist and counsellor to get their views.
Life is not like clockwork. We're not little robots who just go along the whole time. Change is confusing, upsetting, it's chaotic. And from the chaos, you have to go through that storm. There is peace down there, but most people aren't willing to go through the storm. So they stay stuck or stagnant or resigned to kind of, and this is what I'm saying with our culture, it's kind of all very varnishy. It's like just skimming the surface. We'll sit around and talk about EastEnders rather than actually, how are you feeling?
How did I feel when that happened? I have a list of feelings on a sheet, which probably is about 50 or 60 different feelings, which I sometimes give to some men to help them to express what they have felt at a time or what they're feeling now. And it's because we haven't the same emotional literacy, so we find it a lot more difficult to put words to feelings. So we actually need a lot more help with that. So when people can begin to process the emotions in that way, in other words, to attach words to the emotions and express them, it helps to unlock the problem-solving process.
Change is a constant norm throughout our lives, and for all of us it is inevitable. During the course of our lives, from childhood to maturity, we experience many beginnings and many endings. We can't ignore the changes that occur at midlife and think that we can just carry on as before. We need to find ways of dealing with change. The autumn is a place familiar to many midlifers. We can end up trapped in a life which is not wonderful, but which offers us predictability and a measure of security. So a choice has to be made: change or stagnate. Unfortunately, we adults stay in the autumn far too long. At some point we reach a fork in the road, with signposts offering us 2 alternatives. One says minor transition and the other major life transition.
They were very difficult years because I was at that point of my career where I had to work hard to maintain my position. I began to experience considerable stress in the workplace, and coupled with the pressures of family life and so on, I began to become quite unwell at that time.
I started to look at my life in terms of what have I actually achieved. And it was very difficult at that stage to see anything that I could count as an achievement. It's different now. I can look back and I'm looking at it differently. But then it was very much about the fact that I was pushing 50 and I didn't own my own house. I had no pension. I had no career. I had managed to move sideways a lot, but hadn't reached any kind of a pinnacle. And I was looking around at my peer group who all seemed to have all of those things, and it was about stuff. And I thought, I have achieved nothing.
Whenever I started to tell her about the abuse that happened to me as a child, it was the difficulties arose then. The wife was unable or unwilling or whatever, for to deal with it, and we just couldn't reach there anymore, and it just got to be where there was little no communication shut down so many levels. It was never there before. The whole intimacy was gone, the best friend was gone. And
the actual birthday of turning 50 coincided with a lot of other things that were going on in my life at that time. I had, and again, you're inclined to think, oh yes, it was a one particular moment in time, but if we do look back and reflect, you can see a bit of a pattern leading up to something. But definitely I was on a bit of a journey then that included a number of things that all came together in and around my 50th birthday.
There's been a current ongoing thing with me, particularly around family members who are quite ill, and mainly my children, or a couple of my children, and I, because of the concerns of that and my inability often to do anything about it, I got kind of drained It was gradual, it crept up on me, and my difficulty is because I kind of work in the field and work with individuals who had depression. I could recognise that it was happening, but thought because I knew about it that I could fight it off and I didn't need support and help, that I could go with it.
I hadn't recognised the change as a loss. I was really, really confused. I just didn't know what was going on. I felt totally isolated and sort of sort of stuck within myself, and nobody to talk to about it, because my husband, we were playing this sort of bit of a game with each other that we were in denial of what was going on with myself.
This cycle can be repeated indefinitely. Success lies in our ability to identify which season we are in. That helps us make sense of our present thoughts and feelings and enables us to make informed decisions for the next stage of our lives.
Okay, friends, so that's what we are talking about. So we just heard about people who are going through this currently and how they looked at this particular condition of transition. Okay? Now, we need to understand there was a cultural context. Okay? There was a cultural context in which this entire midlife transition or midlife crisis came to be. We need to understand it by going back in history, not in 2020. We need to go back somewhere to the end of the war, or maybe even at 1939. That was the beginning of the war, when nobody thought about it. Nobody thought the First World War was over, and nobody thought there would be a Second World War, but there was. And then things just fell flat. Now, people started trying to do this or understand this right from that time. And there were psychologists like Carl Jung, we'll be dealing with that, who speaks about a thing about individuation. But there were people like Erik Erikson, who also studied the psychosocial developmental process that a person can go through. So what are the crisis moments, and what are the things that you can do to overcome the crisis moment, and so on. A developmental task to achieve. And now it is there right from the time of, say, post-World War I. Post-World War I. So it was there. Because after the World War I, people were very optimistic. They thought that things were over. No more world wars, and devastation is gone, but the devastation in World War II was even more. Bombing Hiroshima, Nagasaki, and all that was greater. But these people thought it was over, we can get back to life. Just like our COVID-19 situation. Now, look at that. You and I, we wish to open the door, open our windows, walk down on the street as normal as ever, right? You wish that, I wish that too. But then it is not. It's not that. It's not possible. So it is suffocating. It's suffocating, right? Now, that is exactly what people were going through in the 1930s and 1940s, 45 and 50. So the person who actually spoke about the terminology called midlife crisis was Elliot Jacques. Okay, Elliot Jacques was somebody who actually spoke about the terminology called midlife crisis. And he wrote that during the period, we come face to face with our limitations, our restricted possibilities, and mortality. Now, these are vital. Our limitations, our restricted possibilities, and our mortality. Now, how do we look at that? Now, when we're talking about limitations, it is an awareness. Now, say, for example, a person in their prime of 15, 16, 17, they're idealistic in their mindset. They want to change the world, no matter what. Okay? They are going through an evaluatory phase. And they're going through a phase saying that I'm not a child, I'm not an adult, then who am I? A good question to ask, right? I'm not a child anymore, but neither am I an adult, so who am I? And that is what we are talking about, adolescent period, teenage we're talking about. So that is why there'll be a lot of changes. There'll be change in clothing, change in hairstyle, the footwear they wear, change there. They might puncture their ears all along, they have a spike, and they might tear off their new jeans. Today you have a torn jeans as well. What are they doing actually? It's almost like crying for help. It is to attract attention. It's like saying that, look at me, I am somebody. I don't know, I'm not a child, I'm not an adult, but I'm somebody. But look at me, I'm somebody. That is when they do all kinds of changes physically. They try to get into gangs of boys together, girls together. Of course, they'll also have pair bonding time that's happening there. They will also have kind of breaking rituals and norms, social norms, family norms. They can get attracted to people who are idealistic in their life, people who are reformers, who change the world, like people in Marvel comics, or maybe Batman, Superman, Spider-Man, and Aquaman, probably so. And they can get attached. That's when they get attracted to a sports icon, or they get attracted to a film star, or they can get attracted to a celebrity, or they can even get attracted to a fictitious character. A fictitious character. Like, say, for example, Spartacus. Oh, Spartacus, you heard of Spartacus. He's the Thracian gladiator who was responsible for the Third Servile War, a revolt, a slave revolt against the Roman government. And he was from Thrace. He was working in the auxiliary. He was taken as captive. Then he survived his own death in the arena, fighting as a gladiator. So therefore, to save face, they put him into a ludus where they trained gladiators. So he was there. But this man thought about freedom. Slaves did not think about freedom, but he thought about freedom. So he thought every man, woman, and child should be free. That's his motto. So a gladiator is a slave. So he sort of instigated. So 72 people who killed their master and ran away from the ludus, a place of training. And then they started this Third Servile War, which in fact the slaves won, but ultimately they lost. But today, even in political journals, they quote Spartacus. Why? Freedom, truthfulness, honesty, Spartacus. The techniques that he used, all that is still spoken about. Now imagine a 17-year-old reading about Spartacus will say, oh, I am Spartacus. They'll say, I want to be like Spartacus. I want freedom, justice, truthful, honesty, which is not happening at home. Mama's fighting, Papa's fighting. At school, my teachers are not understanding me. Nobody's understanding me. Because I'm going through something. Nobody's understanding me. Therefore, I need equality. I want justice. I want honesty. So they become very idealistic. That is a state. But what happens to that state? It goes dormant. It just goes dormant. They think we have endless possibility. Endless possibility. That means you can stretch the skies to its limits. But that's too idealistic. That's not practical. They have very idealistic mindset. But then, later on, this whole thought goes dormant and they are worried about career choices, marriage, childbirth, and then work, finances, providing for the family. The whole thing is on the external until they are 35 plus. And suddenly this crops up in the mind. Then you say, I cannot run like I used to run. I cannot run the stairs as I used to do it. I am not physically that great now. I put on a lot of weight. I have diabetes. I have cholesterol. I have blood pressure. I have physical conditions. I am not. That's the limitation. Then it's a rude shock to understand that I am limited. From a position of I am limitless, I'm moving into I am limited. That's the first thing. Second, my possibilities are restricted. I'm confined to certain possibilities. Now, say for example, when I'm single, I can make any choice I want. But if I join the priesthood, my choices are limited. When you join the convent, your choices are limited. That means there is a kind of a rule, there is a constitution, there is a statute that we need to follow. There are daily rules, the congregational rules, there are community rules, and everything is governed by the bell. But what about me? What about me? I as a person, I also need something more, which I can't, which I'm trying to fit into that. Till 35, I fit into that. Till 40, I fit into that. but then it becomes suffocating, restricted possibilities. And the third is the fear that I'm going to end very soon. I'm moving towards my grave. Now, some people say, how are you feeling? Already one step in the grave. I'm moving towards mortality. So mortality is a kind of a demarcation where that becomes a yardstick to measure my life. So therefore, the mind is not worried about the quality of life, what I really want to do, but the mind is actually having a yardstick that is called mortality, that I'm going to end up one day, and then I tend to move towards it. So I get into disillusion, I get into fear, psychosis, I can get into behaviors that are totally not in sync with what I am doing. So that is what he was talking about as a midlife crisis. Okay. Now this is what he says. People tend to react to Jacques' life with amazement. Why? That was amazing. His life was amazing. Now imagine, he had first life and second life. That means he also went through a crisis. The one who talked about midlife crisis went through a lot of crises. Now the question is, how can a person stay productive for so long? A good question, right? And why? Because Elie Jacques was he had 2 doctorates in medicine and psychology and a training in psychoanalysis before he was 35. Great achievement, but that is achievement of doing something, getting a doctorate, a couple of doctorates in medicine and psychology, and a training in psychoanalysis, and that's exactly what he did. But what was the second life? The second life had nothing to do with the first life. The second life, he became an independent thinker, bringing up an original thoughts and concept at 70 years and 80 years of life. He had a very long life. Last up to 1990s, late into the 90s. So that means what happened? He was a doctor, he was a psychologist, he was a psychoanalyst, but later on, he turned out to be an independent thinker, bringing out concepts. He also got into marketing, conceptualizing a group which has nothing to do with medicine, psychology, or psychoanalysis. What made this transition at midlife? He was able to go through that turmoil of midlife, where he passed from his first life into a productive second life. And that is why people tend to think, how can a man stay productive for so long? Now, this also gives us an indication that it is possible. It is possible that we can have a first life, we can go through this transition, and we can transcend this and have a productive life even after, when we are 60, 70, 80 for those who are strong, as the psalmist puts it. They can be. So that's a kind of a positive note. Now, why? We need to understand this, people's concept of age. People have a concept of age, right? Now, if you notice, we are talking about post-World War I or World War I and more. So the life expectancy during that time was very, very less. It was like 40, 45 max, 45. So your life is only 45. So you have to accommodate the entire life in 45 years. So what will you do? You got married when you were 20 years old. Then you got a career going. Then you have children. You got them married, or they are out, and then you die. So life is over at 45. But today, the thing is, the life expectancy has moved beyond 45 years because of, thanks to medicine and other things, psychological, mental health expertise that we have grown into. So the life expectancy is moved beyond 45 years, and it can be 80 for those who are strong, just like psalmist predicted, and continues to rise, because some people live up to 90, 95, 100 plus. There are people. So what happens? People say, my life is getting over at 45. Now what am I going to do with another 60 years of life, or 40 years of life, or 30 years of life? I don't know what to do. So that becomes the time of crisis for most of us. So the concept of time and aging is what we need to talk about. Now, this is what we are talking about. As life expectancy increases, changes in middle age will become an existential necessity for many people, because we are going to live long. Therefore, these transitions are going to happen. My child is going to get married and go away. I might join the religious congregation or priesthood, and I might go through cholesterol, pressure, and obesity, and I might have a heart condition. Yeah, it's possible, but still I'm alive. But I can go through this transition. So what happens after? And that is the fear that most people have. Some of these changes will be internally driven, namely a transition that might cause you to take stock in where you are in life and make some indeed necessary adjustment in your life. Now, what is it? It is stock taking, a review of life, as we do it in recollection days, a review of life. We tend to look backward. It's a time for reflection on our quality of life, looking backward and saying, what have I done with my life? What did I achieve? Now, first thing that comes to our mind, yes, I have a doctorate. I am very good at my career. I have created a name for myself in society, and I'm busy doing a lot of things. The question comes, what? Really? That's all? That is the haunting question. That's all what you did. That's all what you did. Your achievement externally. But did you actually do what you really wanted to? Yeah, that is a haunting question. Or did you do it because you were conditioned by people around you, society around you, or the culture that defines you, or the religion that makes you? And you just went through a path without even thinking, believing that it's going to take me somewhere. And then it's a root shock. I'm somewhere. Now, what have I done? This is a stock-taking process. Okay? Nothing to be afraid of. This is perfectly a normal process. For some, a midlife crisis is more complicated. It can be an uncomfortable time emotionally, which can lead to depression. Now, this is not a general norm. Some people have a very smooth transition. If they had adapted their life situations to what they really want to and what they are, to their work and so on, they tend to have a kind of a transition which can be not very rough. But for some people, it can be rough, just like we're talking about all the stories that we talked about. Okay. So when you're talking about Reggie Perry or Reginald Perry, he had this. It's complicated because it was a root shock for him. But for some people, it's a transition that can happen. That's perfectly okay. Those who have a hard time with this transition stage might experience a range of feelings such as unhappiness with life and the lifestyle that may have provided them with happiness for many years. Now look at that. That's exactly what happened to Reginald Perry. He had satisfied life. That means he was a good stockbroker. He had a timetabled life. He went financially secure, comes back, has a beer, relaxes. He's got a wife whom he can have no complication with. He's got two beautiful children growing up. He's got recreational activities. He meets his friends. All that he's doing, but it's a routine. It's a routine. And he's been going through a routine, and now comes a time that he's questioning his own very lifestyle. What am I doing? What is the point of going to the office on Monday morning? That's the question he's asking. What am I doing in this relationship with my wife? I'm married for, say, 20 years, and what have I done with my life? Can I seek another? Is this what I want? Now, that's the question people can go through, because they tend to question something that provided happiness and satisfaction for years, because they believed that that is what was giving them happiness for many years. But here's a root shock saying that is what I want to do, then it becomes complicated. Boredom with people and things that may have been of interest to them before, that's possible. Feeling a need for adventure and change, so people can do that. Adventure and change, they can have an affair. They can go and go for a hike, and they can enroll them into a mountain climbing club, or they can join a marathon club. Now, friends, I know this. In Chennai, I live in a city called Chennai in South India, Tamil Nadu. In Tamil Nadu, what happens is, like, you go to the beach there in the morning, say 5 o'clock. There are so many clubs. There are cycling clubs. There are marathon clubs like Chennai Runners, Chennai Minners. And if you see the age factor, age group, most of them are like this. They belong to this age group of 35 and 60, 65. And what are they doing? They're trying to take something that they love. It's all of a sudden, it's a transition. But that's a beautiful transition. So why would somebody take a stupid sport like marathon? So you run a marathon, that is a full marathon is 28 kilometers. Now, why would somebody kill themselves running 28 kilometers for nothing? Marathon is not about finishing first, it's about completion. Yes. So in order to run a 28-kilometer marathon, I need to practice 10 kilometers every day. Why would I kill myself? But probably that's what they wanted, a meaning which they wanted. Till then it was work, family, recreation. But this is something that was there. I didn't give a kind of picture to it. So now I'm giving it. So that's basically what they do. Okay. Feeling a need for adventure and change. So they can do this. Or people can take up traveling. They travel to various places like backpackers. Today we have a lot of backpackers, right? So they take off, they have a backpack, they pack and they go to another country. They want to go, they live in cheap accommodations, have street food, and they even resign their jobs, stay for 6 months in a particular country, come back and work for some time, earn decent amount of money, go back again. Now this is a lifestyle many people have chosen. I know a particular person from England, he does that. He's doing it for the past 14 years now. He lives in India for about, say, 6 months. Goes back to London, and he gets a part-time job, works for 6 months, comes back to India for 6 months. Why? Because the money there in pounds is more than what he can spend here. So he lives very simple life, austere life, with like the Indian thing, simple vegetarian food, and he loves it. That's what he wants it. And he was a petrochemical engineer. Can you believe that? A petrochemical engineer who was drawing huge salary in the UK. He can resign his job, come here, and then he used to come to Anugraha to attend courses, which is wonderful. But that is adventure and change. But that's more positive. It has taken a while. That means he has gone through this crisis. Questioning the choice they have made in their lives and the validity of decisions they made years ago. They might question a lot of things. What am I doing? Sometimes these kind of thoughts can come. What am I doing in my religious life? I committed during some time, but is it what that I want to do? This is what I want to continue? Is this the mission that I want to do? Or is the ministry that I want to do? I put in a school, I'm the headmistress, I'm managing property, managing finances, managing the officials there, putting things in order for the last 25 years. Now, is this what I want? There are many sisters and fathers who are moved into counseling. They have moved into social work. They moved into working with particular groups of people where they feel fulfillment and contentment. They make choices. I know a couple of people. They were working in a corporate environment, and when they were 47, that person resigned and he moved into psychology and finished his master's in clinical psychology, and he's a clinical psychologist. People can have career choices, well, because now they're thinking about what gives meaning to my existence. That is equally important. Okay. Okay, friends. So I think I will stop here, and we will. I told you we'll go slow. It's okay. We can understand the concepts right. We can take our time, and we have another 4 days to go. Okay. So, do you have any questions, clarifications, or doubts?
Yeah, friends, if you have any question, there is a hand icon in the participant list panel. Just below the participant list panel. You can make use of that so that I can unmute you and you can ask questions.
Yeah, somebody, Father Nitya has asked, could you highlight the midlife crisis of religious? First of all, there could be a crisis of faith. So they feel, our saints, like Teresa of Avila or John of the Cross, they were talking about the darkness of the soul, the thing that they feel so dark and so abandoned that they feel that even God is not there to listen. Yeah, that's basically the crisis point. Maybe in their time it was not pronounced as midlife transition, but then they were probably going through that age. If you actually understand Teresa of Avila's age, or John of the Cross's age, basically that, and a feeling of abandonment by God. Now, that is why, you see, even in the life of Teresa of Avila, she was a person who tried to reform the Carmelites. She did reform the Carmelites. So that was the thing, that was the transition that had taken place for her. So in religious life, a crisis of faith will happen. Secondly, it could also mean two things, because one thing is getting old, and second, we also have biological changes. Like for women religious, they can attain menopause. And that is a kind of a loss. Basically, you feel a sense of loss. Or probably you go through a medical condition and you ask the question, why? Maybe there is a medical condition like operations or surgeries or removal of organs and so on. That could also kind of precipitate a condition. Third, disillusionment of the congregation itself. Because when you actually joined the congregation, there were certain things that was projected, that our congregation is going to do this, 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 this. Now, say for example, I'll give you an example of the Redemptorists. Our the charism is to reach out to the most abandoned poor. That is the charism that we have. Okay, so okay, that's fair enough. That's a very good thing. Now, how they do it? They have a pastoral plan. We all have our pastoral plans and our statutes. So you have different kinds of apostolates. You have the parochial ministry, you have the educational ministry, you have youth ministry, you will have working for justice and truth. Then you have the justice ministry. Then you might also have like counseling and psychotherapy. You can also have a social apostolate, working for domestic laborers, for the migrants. There's so many things that we do. And it is a rosy picture. And I have something that I've taken. I choose this congregation, therefore I can make sense of my own life. But I go in for formation, and I'm following a strict timetable because I'm full of enthusiasm, following a schema, a timetable. I go through, but sometimes I'm confronted with a rude shock. This is not what I paid for. This is not what I wanted. And I've been doing this again and again, and that rude shock sets in, and then I don't know where I am, what I'm doing. So this can happen. A crisis of faith, a crisis of what am I doing? Some people also can have a crisis on trust issues. Okay, so trust issues like you're living in a community and, where 2 or 3 gather in my name, there's God. There are also problems, right? It's a given. So then what happens? I'm there, and the one whom I trusted for so many years, I grew up with, and they have sort of backstabbed me, and how can I trust again? And I have to live in the same community. And now I don't know how to complement or how to coexist. That can create a lot of stress around me. That could be another area. There could be a lot of work-related stress as well. I tend to think that I am Jesus Christ. We can have that, okay? That kind of mindset that I want to save the world in 1 day and a half. It's not possible. So I don't take care of my own self, like food, sleep, and recreation. Then it can have an adverse effect on my physical condition, and that physical condition can trigger this kind of transition. That's a possibility. So there are n number of possibilities like this. So that is the question that I'm going to place before you by the end of the session. Okay, anyway, that will come to that.
Yeah, Father Jacinta Gracie is asking this question.
Please go ahead.
What are the remedies to handle the crisis? As religious, what are the techniques or help that can be offered for the smooth transition?
Yeah, maybe I can answer you like this. See, today, I think the generation that we are an instant coffee generation and a ramen noodles generation, which is quick fixes. There are no quick fixes for that, and it's going to take a while. And we'll talk about that in detail, maybe tomorrow, day after. Can you hang on to that question? We're going to deal with that. If you don't address that question, please come up with that question. We're going to deal with that in the days to come.
Yeah, another question from Ivy. What is the age before midlife transition that is suitable to create awareness and prepare for midlife transition?
Basically, midlife transitions begins from somewhere between 30 years to 60 years. Sometimes it moves on to 65. It is an extended time after adolescence. It's an extended adulthood. So we are encountered by a series of situational issues that can have an impact on the person. Depending on another important key concept like resilience, or spiritually put fortitude. The resilience, the ability to withstand pressure, it varies from person to person. Some people the threshold is more, some people the threshold is less. Now, depending on which, we might face it earlier or later. So it's a bracket between 30 years and 60 years, but definitely most people go through that. Some transitions are smooth, some it is going to be having a problem.
The question continues. Why do you think this topic is not much spoken during formation in religious life?
A good question to ask. Good question to ask. Many things are not spoken during that time. Like even some of the things like how you can deal with certain mental disorders, like borderline personality disorders, because we out of generosity, like men, go once you're ordained as a priest, you want to go save the world, you get caught. Sometimes counseling people who are struggling from borderline personality disorder, not because they are bad people, but they have a problem of getting attached and then emotionally suffocating, and they have self-mutilating behavior and also like impulsive behavior and so on. So therefore, what happens? It becomes suffocating. But there are so many things that can be done. So one of the things that I would suggest, like, you have a lot of takeaways. Like Father Nitya is doing a wonderful job here. Tamil Selvam also is doing a lot of job. So the thing is, you have a lot of takeaway. Suggest to your congregation, make suggestions, make recommendations. So what could be the change possible? Now, this can be a votive course. A votive course in the seminaries and convents, or it can be taught in the novitiate is possible. Or maybe when people before going through a final profession, that's a possibility. So it's not that where it fits in, it's like whether it is addressed. I think the awareness is coming. Today, people are trying to address that through different means, like seminars and workshops and so on. People do that.
What are the concrete crises that face in community life? How to face each of them?
Yeah. Okay, maybe I'll put it offhand, but we're going to come back to that later. Now, one of the things is relationships. See, the whole question is, we can call ourselves brothers in one congregation or sisters in one congregation. Actually, we are not related by blood. So therefore, the temperamental variations are going to be there. There's going to be this power struggle going on at some point of time. And then the whole crisis management without proper or necessary tools that I have can lead to more stress. And this stress can actually trigger a lot of negativity and a negative thought process as a possibility. Sometimes we do not have the necessary tools to handle an issue or even to identify an issue. Or sometimes, there is something called triangle formation in relationships. So I can become a pawn between two people's power games. That is very much possible in the congregational setup. Two powerful sources, say two people are very dominant, but a third person can get roped in and can become the middle of the problem, and that could suffocate as well. So you can actually add on a whole lot of questions like even during transfers that can happen. People tend to negotiate with you for transfers, and one thing they tell you is like There's nobody there. You're the only person. But that's not the way they want. They need a person to be there. But they're trying to convince. But can you say no? Can you dialogue with them? No. If you say no, it's not acceptable. Now, what can I say? Now, it's a kind of a dilemma what to say. The fourth would be the inability for me to communicate what I really want in an amicable way so that the other person comes into a negotiating table. I either react or withdraw. That itself can cause a spiral. That could be 4. And it could be another thing like I need to understand what is my boundary, because that we need to actually revisit childhood. I tend to enact my childhood thing or the behavioral pattern into a communal pattern. Like if I'm a person who don't have a very strong boundary, a thing like I don't know where I end, where you begin, I can get gelled between I cannot say no to people. And that is the most important thing as of I know. People can't say no to people. They'll say yes, but inside they suffer. But they don't know how to say no. That means, where is your boundary? Where do I end? Where you begin? A relationship happens between two people who are having two strong boundaries. They can't mix together. They can only allow one to an extent that they allow. So we can go into another person's boundary only to the extent they allow me to go. Only that much can be a relationship. I mean, if time permits, we'll talk about that later. So these are some few to mention.
Sister Ignatia, you can go ahead.
Yes, Father, thank you.
Thank you, sister.
Yes, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, sister.
So, as I understand, Father Staney, it is like you say about midlife crisis and midlife transition. So, if I understand well, midlife crisis is when a life gets disoriented, and midlife transition is when our life gets reoriented, right, Father?
Yes, that means when I realize that I lack the resources to handle a situation, then it turns out to be a crisis. But when I know that I can develop certain tools so that I can counterbalance the situation, then it turns out to be a transition. I'm not saying it should be smooth, but nevertheless, it moves forward towards the betterment of emotional health and physical well-being.
Maybe that's the reason why, as you propose, we should be given that knowledge much beforehand so that when it happens, we know what's happening to us. Right.
I agree 100%, sister. The only thing is that...
Thank you.
Yeah, we need to. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Father Nitya, you can ask them.
Father Staney, thank you, because touched some important aspects. I would like to see this religious life. Sometimes we lose our individuality. God calls each one individually for a unique contribution to the whole world. And we come with a lot of energy. And sometimes what happens, the community life or some kind of charism, some kind of pressures, all these things makes us to lose that individual contribution to the society. And maybe in the name of obedience or the will of God or the need for something else, that we lose track of it. But can you say that at the age of this transition, that is at the age of midlife, we come back and stand for our originality, even though if you are losing our contribution at different stages of formation, at the age of around 40, 50, can we stand on our legs? Yes, this is my prophetism. I have to live on this. I have nothing to lose. Can we come into that level?
Yeah, actually, that is the conflict, Father. Basically, that is the challenge, basically. It is possible, but, we are in a system wherein it has to go smoothly. So, therefore, there is a hierarchy that is there, right from, say, general, so on. We have a whole lot of hierarchy, and everybody's got a cut-off task. And this task has to be done only with the members provided. Now, the members are saying, or one member is saying that, no, I'm not thinking this is right. I need to go back to my original roots. And there's going to be an opposition because this task is not going to be fulfilled without this particular person as a team. So therefore, there's going to be force levied against this person. Now, if I'm going to be a person who thinks that, okay, I stand for what I believe in, and then can I communicate that? That's one. Second, can I actually withstand that conflict? Or can I amicably handle that conflict? Amicably, I mean, not reacting to it. Now, most of the time what happens, I'm caught up between what I want and my reactions that actually creates a spiral. It becomes worse. But can I actually look at this situation, as a conflict, and how I can resolve it amicably? Do I have the tools? So how am I going to deal with it? So that is something that we can deal with. Okay, I'll give you an example. Maybe you might understand. I lived with a person who had this personality disorder called passive aggressive personality disorder. Okay? So people with passive aggressive personality disorder, as you know, they overtly would not communicate anger, but they covertly, indirectly, they will show anger. So at one point of time, what happened? He even poured acid in my clothes. He's a priest, of course. He's a priest. He poured acid in my clothes, in my washing machine. He burnt all my clothes. He locked my door. He used to throw the keys away. Then he used to put sugar inside my petrol tank on my motorbike. He will puncture my wheels. No, this is a passive way of showing anger. Why he's angry, nobody knows. Okay, but he's angry. Now, I'm living there. Now, is there a way? It's a conflict. Can I handle this conflict? Now, this is a major situation. I can look at this as a conflict. But if I'm going to react to everything, I'm going to lose my cool, and I'm not going to talk about midlife crisis to you as peacefully as I am right now. But I understand that it's a conflict. Now, how will I resolve the conflict? So that means I need something called strategy building. I need to strategize and I need to build it, how to deal with this particular conflict. One of the things is I maintain a distance. I don't kind of push him further or kind of, put him into a spot. I also understand, so therefore, I know what I'm talking. I know what I should not be talking. So a little bit of, but again, this is going to happen again. So sometimes silence works. Now, of course, I'm not in that community anymore, but it was just 3 years. Now, can you withstand it? We can withstand it. I'm not saying that I was great or what, but at least I had help. I had some people who helped me, like Ranugraha, like fathers, Father Lawrence. He helped me a lot. That situation, how to handle that. So that is when I got the insight. It is not a situation to be running away from, but this is what I want to do. But I can identify a conflict and I can strategize so that I can ideally overcome the conflict, or I create a win-win situation. So strategizing is another tool that we need to learn. Conflict resolution is another tool that we can learn. They are mostly practical implications of what we are talking about.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Further, Sister
Yes, brother.
Mangani Fernando is asking this question.
Please.
Can midlife crisis be the outcome of childhood crisis?
Yes. Basically, it's a shadow effect. What we go through as midlife has a shadow effect on childhood and upbringing. And we'll talk about that.
I think the time is up for formal closing, Father Nitya.
Yeah. Dear friends, this is a wonderful time we had, a crisis and the transition. Very important to look at ourselves, whether we are looking at our life as a transition time, energy, revamping ourselves, entering into a new life, or looking at ourselves as a crisis without solution. I think this Father Staney has brought out very clearly about this example of two different people, how they got into a U-turn. I think there's a lot of energy in all of us. And at the age of 30, sometimes the religious become retired. We do what is asked, that's all. You don't need to worry about anything creative ministry. That is not what God wants. God doesn't want you to be a slave, but God wants you to be a leader. All the prophets were leaders. They never bother about whatever happened. They have passed through all the things, but they had something clear in their mind. I have come to obey the will of God. I have come here to create a new world. This is a new Pentecost. I think this is very important that Father Staney has brought in. I thank you very much, Father Staney, for putting us in the right perspective. And I think tomorrow, dear friends, tomorrow we are going to see how to accept our physical transition. We are not like Sachin Tendulkar, full of life and energy and go and do the thing. But things have changed. A lot of things are happening now. We become physically different now. So how to understand physical transition, how to respond to it. I think most of us will be having some type of physical illness or some kind of ailment, some kind of difficulties, challenges, maybe because of overworking, because of underworking, because of not working, or so many things are there. Emotions, there's another day, emotional things, then spiritually getting into rebirth, and at the end we have to enter relational thing. I think the themes are excellent. And today we officially wind up, but still Father is available for some clarification, some other things. And the Father is excellent also in body language. Later on, he will be touching us how to understand our own body and others' body and how to understand language also. But I leave this floor open now for personal direct questions also. Thank you very much. Tomorrow again, we'll meet at 6 to 7:30. 15 minutes before we'll open the floor. And we can listen to some nice music or anything. That Father also will be bringing something. He has got 1 or 2 questions for us to reflect now. So he'll give us, and then we can continue. The floor is open for, again, first some clarifications. 1 or 2 questions for us to reflect and go. He'll be also sending us some video clips. So I'll be giving that link, and those things will be there. Before I wind up, I want to introduce Reverend Father Ben to the group. Father Ben, you are very visible. Father Ben is our host, and he is the one who is guiding us for all the questions from the beginning till the end. Thank you, Father Ben, for this. Other people will remember tomorrow. So, Father Staney, you would like to give us 1 or 2 questions for reflection, and then we'll leave the people open.
Okay, so friends, this is what it's not a very serious thing, but I want you today to give it a serious review of your entire life, right from your childhood till date. Spend some time. You can go to the chapel, or you have time till tomorrow night, tomorrow evening. So spend some time and just give it a review, just a rough review. I'm not saying that you have to be very clinical about it. Just see what is the pattern that's going on in your life. Just a pattern. Okay, so that will be a great help, and it will also help us to put things into perspective. We come tomorrow. So whatever comes, maybe relationships, the parents, siblings, or congregation, the work, and all that, the whole concept of it. Okay. Now, that is a good review. Tomorrow, we are taking it to another level. What is it that you wanted, and what are you doing? That will be question 2. That's tomorrow. Don't think about it today. Today, what we are going to do, make a review right from your childhood up till now. What is going on? Will that be okay?
Yes, Father. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
So thank you very much, friends. So nice being here with you. I will come 15 minutes early tomorrow. So if you have any questions, doubts, clarifications, you're most welcome to ask.
Thank you. Thank you.
Some of the questions, Father.
Yes, brother.
Are we taking some of the questions now?
No, tomorrow I'll come 15 minutes early.
Okay, Father. Okay.
But you can ask the questions, Father.
Yeah. So Brother Ben can actually coordinate, no problem.
Okay.
Like how we used to do, so it's very good.
More questions, yeah. There is a question. Father, lately I have been coming so ladylike. Example, I am beginning to grow my hair, which upon a time long hair was troublesome, and some other tiny changes, likeness. So am I kind of beginning the midlife transition?
Probably yes. Given it could be a circumstance, but it's not that you're turning into a woman or what. Nothing to do with that. Sometimes, now look at me. If I wanted to have a long hair, it's not possible to have a long hair. Okay, because it's not there. But imagine I wanted to have it. What can I do? I can satisfy it in my room wearing a wig or something and taking a photograph, putting it on Instagram. I can do that. But then people who want to have a long hair, probably they were told not to have it because it is not tidy or it is not civil or whatever. But at this point, if they wanted to have it, it's not turning into a girl. They're trying to give a meaning to what they really wanted, which would have been a childhood or a teenage kind of a longing. That's perfectly okay, but you should do it with awareness.
Yeah, another question for that. There are certain stages in life after early childhood, early adulthood, where a person goes wrong. Is it because of midlife crisis or transition?
It's a yes and a no. Sometimes it could be because of midlife transition. Sometimes it could be purely because of oversight. See, mistakes are something that can happen to anybody because of oversight, whether we are young or old or midlife or whatever, it can happen. That could be because of that as well. But certain things that actually creates a lingering feeling, a feeling that's constant in your mind, a thought that's constant in your mind for weeks together, months together. If that is an indicator of a midlife transition.
Yeah. Again, a question about midlife crisis. In religious life, people always bored and dissatisfied with their life and don't want responsibility for their actions. Is this a sign of midlife transition? And if so, how to overcome it?
More than talking about a midlife situation, it can be because of, I will use a word called apathy. Apathy is like a total disinterested stage of whatever reason. Reasons could be many things. I am not appreciated enough. That could be a very good reason. I think that's very much there. People get our jobs done, but they don't say congratulations. It's very seldom people are appreciated. And people also need validation, which is also very seldom coming by. I think probably in most congregations or practically every congregation. Members' presence are not valid. Sometimes it is only the group mindset, majority wins mindset. So in that, people can resign, get into something called resignation. Now, sometimes this resignation can be for a while, and again they can go back. It can be periodic, up and down. But if the resignation is there, it's always an indicator. Take a look at it. It might escalate to another point.
So that's all for the from the chat.
Okay. Right. So we can meet tomorrow then.
You have received on your chat some questions. I think Sister Babita has mentioned it to me.
Yeah, sister, can you hold on for tomorrow? Like I'll come 15 minutes early, so we can have more time before the session, and after session I'll stay back here so that we are able to answer a lot of questions. Will that be okay, friends?
Yes, yes.
Give me a thumbs up if it's okay. Yeah,
yeah, sure.
Thank you.
That's fine. Thank you, friends. Good afternoon, good evening, and good night to all of you from different parts of the world. We'll come up with some nice questions tomorrow, some reflections. Thank you for the Staney. Thank you for the Ben.